Hi, my name is Abdullah from Stranger Games. Today we are going to create this visual novel scene using visual novel for dialogue system for Unity. The original scene was created in Visual Novel Toolkit, which is now deprecated in the asset store.
お母さん、なぜ泣いているの？さあ、目を開けて。私、綺麗でしょ？とても耐えられることじゃないわ。
This scene is part of the Bride of the Nile immersive novel with link in the description below. So now we'll duplicate this scene using visual novel for dialogue system for Unity. To start creating our scene, we'll start by creating visual novel. We'll go to tools, visual novel for dialogue system for Unity, create new visual novel. You can have multiple visual novels per project, but for now we'll only create one visual novel. We'll call it Bride of the Nile. We have some options here. Leaving it to the default will be good for this tutorial. Okay, so now inside assets, inside our visual novel for dialogue system for Unity folder, you will find a new folder is created called Bride of the Nile, which is the folder that is holding our new visual novel. Okay, so now inside our visual novel folder, inside database, we will open our database, our dialogue database, and go to the actors, because we'll start to create our actors and locations. The actors are the characters that appear on the foreground or speak without appearing. The locations hold background images. One location might hold several backgrounds. So for our scene, we have for our scene we have two actors. Bride of the Nile and Mother. Okay, none of those actors will have a choice. I mean, the user will not choose what to say in the script, so we don't have to we will not set is player to true. Now for the fields of the actor, we need to fill the image path, so we'll call the image path for Bride of the Nile bride, and for the mother. Now we have our two actors. Okay, in the locations, we have two backgrounds. One is the title background, which appears at the beginning, and the other is the palace background. So we can create each location can hold multiple backgrounds. For now, we'll create the palace location, and the palace will have an image path of palace, and we can have the other location as other, or we can call it titles. We can call it titles, and here in the image bus we'll type title or titles. So now we have defined our actors and our locations. After we have defined those, we need to copy our images to those locations, and our actors images. So to do that, our project folder, then we will open our visual novel directory. Inside our visual novel directory we will open game resources, and inside this we will open resources. Visual novel for dialogue system for Unity uses two special folder structures. One is game resources approach and the other is called resources approach. For this tutorial we will use the second and easiest one, which is the resources approach. That's why we will copy our resources to our resources folder and not to our game resources folder. So now we are inside our resources folder, inside game resources, inside Bride of the Nile, which is our visual novel directory. Okay, we will start by going into the characters. Okay, we have here two folders from the sample, so we don't need those, so I will remove it. I will also remove those that location. We'll get back to the characters. Now we have defined in our actors a path of bride and mother. So we will create a folder bride and mother. Inside bride we'll copy our bride image, and we will call it default. Each character or location can have a default image which will be displayed when that character or when that location is activated without setting an image. And we can have other images, like for example smiling or something like this, and we can use that also. But for now we will have only one image, so we'll call it default. Now inside the mother folder we'll have the mother image, and we'll call it default. Then inside our background, okay, we have two locations. We have defined two locations. One of them was called titles, with a path of titles, and the other was called palace, with a path of palace. Inside the title we'll copy our title image, and we'll call it default. And inside the palace we'll copy our image, our palace image, we will call it default. Okay, so now we have copied our image resources to our folder structure. You can check the documentation for more details about the folder structure. For now we will change the images from textures to sprite. We have to do this. Okay, we can just remove generate meme maps. Okay. You don't have to remove generate meme maps, but I prefer to do this to save memory. Now we'll start to create our UI stuff. Okay, so we'll save our project and then open from our visual novel directory. We'll open scenes and designer scene, which will be open by default when you first start creating your visual novel. The designer scene in the designer scene you can design your prefabs which will be used along your visual novel. So we can design our menu system, for example. You can change the background image or anything related to the menu system, but we'll not change it in this tutorial, so I will disable it. And I will go to the UI, Visual Novel Unity UI, Dialog UI, and I will not change it for this tutorial. We will use the default UI, but I want to explain that for visual novel, for dialog system for Unity, we have two or we can have several dialog controls. Actually it's fully customizable, so you can have only one dialog control, you can have 10 dialog controls, but by default we only have two. And to understand what dialog control is, for example, we have those two, the dialog panel and the full screen dialog panel. So let's enable the dialog panel. This one shows the script when an actor speaks. This panel shows what the actor is saying. So we can disable this and go to the full screen. Okay, this one shows text in the middle of the screen, and you can edit those or you can create your own. So if you notice the dialog panel is the first one. So in our convention it will have an index of 1, and this is the second one. So in our convention would have an index of 2. I just wanted to explain this because as we are creating our visual novel, we will activate this one or deactivate both depending on what we are doing. The next step is to create our sequence. We'll go to our visual novel directory, databases. We'll open our database, go to the conversation, and we will create a new conversation. We can call it intro conversation. Usually you should almost always set your conversation actor and conversant to none. Check the dialog system for Unity documentation for more details. You may want to change this, but it depends on what you need. For our purposes, none will be our best choice. Okay, for our first node we want to fade in our intro. So to fade in our intro, we don't need an actor or conversant, so we will set both to none. And in the fields, we know that we have two locations, one of them called titles, which have our title background, so we'll call the location titles, and we will leave the location image empty because our title is called default, so we don't have to enter default here. It will be used by default. So what this dialog entry will do will fade in our titles location default image, which is our title. What we want to do also here is to hide our conversation or our text UI. I explained before that we have two text UI, one for the actors and one full screen dialog panel. So this one have an index of 1 and this one have an index of 2, but we want to hide both, so in the active field index we'll enter -1, which means we don't want to display text boxes in this dialog entry, and we'll enter in our sequence this sequence command. This sequence command basically waits for the fading of the background image in this case, or it waits for any process that needs to be finished in that dialog entry. For example, fading or moving, fade in or fade out or moving, and it doesn't allow the user to proceed to the next dialog entry except after this processing is done. And if I set here the parameter to true, it means that I want the next dialog entry to be activated automatically after the process is complete. If it is set to false, it means that I'm giving the user a chance to click to proceed to the next dialog entry after the processing of this dialog entry is done. Okay, so now we are done with this node. In the next node, we want our location to or our background. Okay, we'll set this to none, and we want our background to be in display until the user clicks the left mouse button. So to do that, we'll just leave the dialog entry in its default state, and we'll leave active field index to 0, which means it will not change from the previous dialog entry, which was -1, which means no text will be displayed. So in this node also no text boxes will be displayed, because 0 means don't change the state of the text boxes. Okay, in the next child node we want to fade out our background, so there is a small trick that we can do. Okay, we can leave the location empty, which means we are still in the titles location, we didn't change it. And the location image, we have a special image called black, which means a black image will fade in, so it will basically fade out our title. And we want to wait for this processing and to wait for the fade out process and continue automatically after the fade out is complete to the next node. And we want here to set the actor to none. Okay, in our next node we want to fade in our balance. So in the location we will enter balance, and we want to we don't want to proceed until after the fade in process is complete. So we'll give it this command, and we will continue automatically to the next node after the fade in is complete. In the next node we want to fade in our actor and we want to fade in our text box. So we will have the Bride of the Nile actor active now, and by default this actor will fade into the scene in the center, and we'll have active field index of 1, which means this dialog panel will appear, which will display the text the conversation text that we need. So enter 1 here, and we chose the Bride of the Nile, and we don't want to proceed until the actor is fades in, and then we will proceed automatically to the next node, in which Bride of the Nile will start talking and say, okay, why are you crying, mother? And there is no processing in this node, there is no fading or moving, so we don't have to enter any sequence here. And now the user will have to click the screen to continue to the next node, and in the next node we'll enter the next line. And actually Bride of the Nile is the one saying this line. Don't you see that your daughter is a bride? Okay. The next step we want to do is to fade in the mother. Now the mother will fade in and start talking. So we'll make the actor mother, and there is some processing here, but we don't want to wait for the processing. We'll just proceed to the next one. And in the next process we want to, okay, the mother will enter automatically in the center, but we don't want her to enter in the center, so we'll set the speaker position to center, to left, because we want the mother to enter in the left, and we want in the next node the Bride of the Nile to move to the right. So in this node the mother will fade in the left position, and immediately before the fade in completes, it will proceed to this node, which will move the Bride of the Nile to the right position. Okay, actually here we moved our actor to the right, so we want to wait for the for this process to complete before automatically continuing to the next node, where the mother says, I'm crying over losing my daughter. Let's save this scene, save this dialogue, and to test it we want to open the designer scene, which is opened automatically, but it's located here inside your visual novel directory, inside scenes, designer scene, and there is conversation data object, and you want to make sure you are using the right database inside your visual novel, and choose the conversation you want to test, then save your scene and click play. Okay, let's open our dialogue. as you can see, this node faded in our title, and this entry just waits for me to click. So I click, and now the palace faded in, the girl, the bride faded in, and then the script started playing, and then I click to proceed. The next script started playing, then I click OK. The mother faded in, and the next step the girl moved to the right, but I want then the mother started to speak, but I want to the mother to fade in and the bride to move to the right at the same time. So to do this, I will automatically here in the sequence I will enter continue sequencer command. This sequencer command immediately proceed to the next node or the next dialog entry. So basically what will happen is that the mother will enter in the left, or will fade in the left side, and at that timing, before the fade is complete, immediately it will continue to the next node, which will move our actor to the right, and then the mother start talking like this. So let's test this out. Okay, we have it right. Okay, so let's continue with our conversation. Everything is nice until now, so we'll create our next node where the mother is still talking and saying over a bride getting ready to die. Now the bride of the Nile is the one talking. There is no change in positions or in text boxes or anything, so we'll just leave everything as is and just enter the actor and say no mother, don't cry because I have won the honor of sacrifice, so another girl doesn't have to die and enjoys life. We'll continue like this. Okay, so now we have our conversation complete, and we want to either proceed to the next scene. In that case, we will use a sequence command called vn load next vn load scene, or in that case we don't have another conversation, so we'll just return to menu. Okay, now we want to test our conversation. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, if something like this happens, just make sure in the conversation data you have chosen the right conversation and the right database inside your visual novel directory. Play. Okay, feed in our title, wait for click, and I click and fade out, then fade in our palace, then fade in our actor, and fade in this text box, and then allowing you to click and proceed to the next dialogue, and here the mother will enter the scene, and the Bride of the Nile will move out of the way to the right. Then the mother will start talking, and as you see, automatically the speaking actor will be highlighted, and the non-speaking actor will be like a little bit darkened. You can disable this behavior if you want, but this is an advanced topic that you can check in the documentation or in the next tutorials. And now we went back to the title. So supposedly we wanted to build this visual novel and to make it work. So we are not finished yet. We have to go to tools, visual novel for dialogue system for Unity, and choose to create VN conversation scenes, and choose our visual novel. Okay, we have Bride of the Nile and example, and we can have any number of visual novels we want, but now we want to activate our Bride of the Nile. To explain what this do, let's look at the build settings. As you can see now, the example is in the build settings, and we don't want the example to be built. We want the Bride of the Nile visual novel to be built. Activate visual novel, and then choose Bride of the Nile, and select folder, and it will ask me if you want to remove all other scenes from build settings. And yes, in this case we want to remove all the other scenes. You might want to keep them if you have other custom scenes there, but in our case the other scenes in the build setting are not useful, so yes. And now we'll look at the build setting, and we'll see that okay, it seems that we want to make sure we have created our conversation scenes. If you check the Bride of the Nile visual novel folder, inside scenes there is conversation scenes folder, and it's empty. Visual novel for dialogue system for Unity works by creating a scene for every conversation you have in the database. So those scenes should be created automatically if you create visual novel scene, and it shows your visual novel, and just select folder, and it should be created. Yes, and it is created now. So this step should be before you choose to activate the visual novel. That is the next step, and then you choose Bride of the Nile, and then select and remove other from build settings. And now you'll notice that okay, we have the start and loading and the conversation 001, which is the only conversation we have. And now we can go to the scene scenes folder, and open the start. And if we build our project, it will behave like this. When you start, the menu system will appear. Okay, and you can restart the game from the beginning. Of course, you can save, you can load again, or you can change the volume here. You can quit. If you choose to restart, and it will behave like this. Start. Okay, so now we have an issue. Okay, so we'll restart our game, and as you can see, it appears now, and the visual novel now have an aspect ratio, a central aspect ratio that was set up by default, but it doesn't seem to match our our background's aspect ratio. That's why we have this weird stuff going on. Okay, to fix this we can start to go to the conversation scene, and in our main camera we just see solid color and black. Actually, you can edit the conversation scene as you see fit. Just create it automatically from here, then edit it as you want. Next thing we'll do is to check our game resources, background, title, and check our aspect ratio. So we have a 960 by 540. Okay, that's a 1.77 aspect ratio. So we go back to our database and make sure in the variables in the fixed aspect ratio is 1.77777, and make sure that all of your backgrounds use the same aspect ratio, and preferably use the same size. Okay, so now if we play it again from start, we'll have more reasonable look. Okay, so that's it. It's very simple, and you can build your visual novel now to any platform. It's very simple, and there are a lot of advanced feature in visual novel for dialogue system for Unity, which you can check in the documentation and in future tutorials. But you can always just an overview of the advantage of the advanced customizations you can do. You can edit your dialogue UI prefab. You can have any number of text boxes depending on your needs. You can customize your menu from this designer scene, so you can activate it and edit its design and then apply the prefab. Okay, you can have those actor positions modified. So now we only have we only used the center, left, and right, but you can use those other positions, or you can create your own, or you can delete some of the positions. You can customize all of this. But if you renamed any of those or just changed it, you have to make sure in the dialogue entry you enter the actor position exactly as it is inside here. So it's very flexible asset, and actually we are only scratching the surface of it in this tutorial. I hope you like it. Please share, like, and subscribe, and tell me your opinions, and see you later.